When tech entrepreneur Sophia Chen faces public humiliation by her manipulative ex at an elite gala. She never expects mysterious billionaire Alexander Romano to step in as her savior. But what starts as a rescue mission becomes a dangerous game of trust, betrayal, and forbidden love. Asterisk, what if one secret could change everything you thought you knew about love? Tonight, we follow a journey full of surprises, heartbreak, and moments that will leave you speechless. Comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Don't miss a single twist. Let's go. Asterisk, the crystal chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel, cast fractured. Rainbows across the marble floor as Sophia Chen adjusted her midnight blue dress one final time. The consignment shop gown hugged her petite frame perfectly, but it couldn't hide the tremor in her hands or the hollow ache in her chest. 3 months ago, she would have arrived at the Crystal Gala in a private car. Her name whispered with respect among Manhattan's elite. Now she stood alone in the grand ballroom, a ghost haunting her former life. Scent of expensive perfume and aged whiskey filled the air as New York's tech royalty mingled beneath towering displays of cutting-edge innovation. Sophia moved through the crowd like smoke, her long black hair cascading down her back in carefully arranged waves. Former colleagues offered polite smiles that never reached their eyes. Everyone knew her story. Everyone knew her fall. Sophia Chen, as I live and breathe, the voice froze her blood. She turned to see Marcus Webb, her ex-business partner's lapdog, approaching with a predatory smile. Behind him, cutting through the crowd like a shark sensing blood, came Ryan Mitchell. Ryan looked every inch, the Silicon Valley golden boy in his custom Armani tuxedo. His blonde hair was perfectly styled, his blue eyes cold as winter ice. At 32, he had built an empire on the bones of their failed startup, using her ideas and her connections while painting her as the incompetent partner who dragged him down. "What a surprise to see you here," Ryan said, his voice carrying across the nearby conversations. "I thought you'd given up on the tech world after what happened." The words hit like physical blows. Sophia lifted her chin, forcing steel into her spine. "Hello, Ryan. I see you're doing well. Very well, actually." His voice grew louder, more theatrical. "It's amazing how much clearer your vision becomes when you're not being held back by someone else's limitations." A circle began forming around them. Sophia felt the familiar, suffocating sensation she'd experienced during their relationship. When Ryan slowly convinced her that she was nothing without him, the marble floor felt unsteady beneath her feet. "You know, folks," Ryan addressed the growing crowd, his confidence radiating like heat from a fire. "Sophia here used to be my business partner. We had such potential. But sometimes you have to recognize when someone just isn't cut out for the big leagues." The crowd leaned in, hungry for drama. Sophia's former colleagues watched with fascination and pity. She wanted to run, to disappear into the New York night, but her legs felt rooted to the floor. "The truth is," Ryan continued, false sympathy dripping from every word, "Sophia had some good ideas, but she lacked the execution skills to make them reality. When our company started struggling, I tried to help her. But she became difficult, emotional. You know how some people handle pressure? The implication hung in the air like poison." Several people nodded knowingly, accepting his version without question. Sophia felt the walls closing in, the same way they had when Ryan systematically dismantled her confidence, her connections, her very sense of self. "I think that's enough," she whispered, but her voice was lost in the murmur of agreement. From the crowd? The real tragedy, Ryan pressed on, now fully performing for his audience, is that Sophia could have been great if she had just learned to listen. But pride comes before the fall, doesn't it? He looked directly at her with mock concern. "Hope you found something more suited to your abilities, Sophia? Not everyone is meant for this level of business." The humiliation was complete. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Sophia could see pity in their eyes, the uncomfortable shuffling of feet as people began to distance themselves. From her social toxicity, this was exactly what Ryan wanted, to publicly destroy any remaining credibility she might have. Just as Sophia felt her composure beginning to crack, a low, authoritative voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Interesting perspective, Mitchell. Every head in the crowd turned toward the speaker. A tall man in an impeccably tailored black tuxedo stepped forward from the shadows near the bar. He was devastatingly handsome, with dark hair and piercing, green eyes that seemed to see straight through to a person's soul. His presence commanded the room in a way that made conversations stop and hearts skip beats. Ryan's confident smirk faltered. "I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" The stranger extended his hand with casual authority. "Alexander Romano, Romano Industries." The crowd's reaction was electric. Romano Industries was legendary, a private equity empire known for turning struggling companies into billion-dollar success stories. Alexander Romano himself was a myth made flesh, notoriously private and impossibly powerful. Ryan's face went pale as he shook Alexander's hand. "Mr. Romano, it's an honor. I had no idea you would be here tonight." Alexander's smile was polite but razor-sharp. "I make it a point to attend events where I might meet interesting people." His gaze moved to Sophia, and she felt her pulse quicken. Under the intensity of those green eyes, I have to say your story about Ms. Chen is fascinating. Alexander's attention remained fixed on Sophia, his green eyes holding an intensity that made her breath catch. There was something familiar in his gaze, as if he knew secrets about her that she'd forgotten herself. "You see," Alexander continued, addressing Ryan but never breaking eye contact with Sophia, "I remember reading about Chen Dynamics. The marketing campaigns were revolutionary. That augmented reality project for the automotive industry was particularly brilliant." Ryan tried to maintain his composure, but Sophia could see sweat beginning to form on his forehead. "Yes, well, that was a team effort, actually. Indeed." Alexander's interruption was smooth as silk. "I have the original pitch documents. Quite detailed with timestamps and authorship clearly marked. Fascinating reading." He finally looked at Ryan, and his expression was pure steel. "Tell me, Mitchell, how exactly did you contribute to the conceptualization of those campaigns?" The crowd was hanging on every word now, sensing that the tables had dramatically turned. Sophia felt her heart racing as she realized what was happening. This mysterious billionaire was publicly challenging Ryan's version of events, armed with evidence. "I handled the business side," Ryan stammered, desperately trying to find his footing. "The execution, the strategy." Alexander pulled out his phone with theatrical deliberation. "I actually have a recording from one of your investor meetings. Would you like me to play it? The part where you explicitly state that all creative concepts came from your partner while you handled operations?" The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Ryan's face had gone from pale to crimson as he realized he'd been caught in his web of lies. But Alexander wasn't finished. He turned to Sophia, and when he spoke, his voice carried a warmth that made her knees weak. "Ms. Chen, I've been hoping to meet you for some time. Your work is exactly what my company needs for our new venture." Then, in a move that shocked everyone present, Alexander stepped closer to Sophia and offered her his arm. "I believe dinner is about to be served. Would you join me at my table?" The crowd erupted in whispers as Sophia, still reeling from the sudden reversal of fortune, placed her trembling hand on Alexander's arm. As they walked away, leaving Ryan standing speechless and humiliated, Alexander leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Sometimes the best revenge is simply being magnificent." Evening transformed into something from a fairy tale. Sophia found herself seated at the most prestigious table in the ballroom, surrounded by titans of industry who treated her with genuine respect. Alexander proved to be an engaging dinner companion, his conversation ranging from business philosophy to art, but always returning to her ideas and insights. Yet beneath his charm, Sophia sensed layers of complexity. The way his jaw tightened when certain names were mentioned. How his eyes went distant when discussions turned to family. The careful way he deflected personal questions while drawing out every detail of her professional dreams. When the gala finally ended, Alexander walked her to the hotel's entrance. A sleek black Bentley waited outside, its chrome gleaming under the streetlights like liquid mercury. "Allow me to drive you home," Alexander said, his voice soft but leaving no room for argument. "It's the least I can do after such an eventful evening." As Sophia settled into the luxurious leather seats, She couldn't help but glance back at the hotel. Through the glass doors, she could see Ryan standing alone, his earlier triumph turned to ash. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. The Bentley glided through Manhattan's neon-lit canyons as Alexander sat beside her, his presence both comforting and intimidating. The silence between them was charged with unspoken questions and dangerous possibilities. "You didn't have to do that," Sophia finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Defending me like that? You don't even know me." Alexander's green eyes caught the passing streetlights as he turned to face her. "Actually, I know more about you than you might think, Sophia. May I call you Sophia?" She nodded, studying his profile in the dim light. Everything about him radiated power and control. From his perfectly tailored tuxedo to the way he commanded attention without effort. Yet there was something gentle in his manner when he spoke to her, something that made her feel safe for the first time in months. "I've been watching your career for the past 2 years," Alexander continued, his voice low and measured. "Chen Dynamics was brilliant. Your marketing strategies revolutionized how tech companies approach consumer engagement. What Ryan did to you, stealing your work and destroying your reputation? It's exactly what I expected from a man like him." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "You knew Ryan before tonight?" Alexander's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We've crossed paths in business circles. Let's just say his reputation for taking credit for other people's work precedes him." The Bentley pulled up to Sophia's modest apartment building in Queens, and she felt a flush of embarrassment. The contrast between Alexander's obvious wealth and her current circumstances was stark. The billionaire's Bentley didn't belong on this street of fire escapes and late-night laundromats. "Would you mind if I walked you up?" Alexander asked, already moving to open his door. "There's something important I'd like to discuss." As they climbed the narrow staircase to her 4th-floor studio, Sophia's mind raced. What could Alexander Romano possibly want with her beyond tonight's rescue mission? The man who could buy and sell companies with a phone call was following her into a building where the elevator had been broken for 6 months. She unlocked her door with fingers that trembled slightly, hyper-aware of Alexander's presence behind her. When he stepped inside her tiny apartment, the space seemed to shrink around his commanding aura. His eyes took in every detail without judgment: the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter, the second-hand furniture, the single bed that doubled as her office during the day. "Coffee," Sophia offered, needing something to do with her hands, "please." Alexander settled into her only chair as if it were a throne, somehow making the modest space feel more elegant simply by his presence. As Sophia prepared coffee, Alexander spoke. "I want to offer you something, Sophia. A partnership that could change everything." She turned, coffee pot suspended in midair. "What kind of partnership?" "Romano Industries is launching a new division focused on innovative marketing and brand development. We need someone with vision, someone who understands how to connect with consumers on an emotional level." He paused, his green eyes intense. "I need you." Sophia set down 2 steaming cups and perched on the edge of her bed, facing Alexander across the small space. "That's very generous, but I have to ask, what's the catch? Men like you don't rescue failed entrepreneurs out of the goodness of their hearts." Alexander's lips curved into the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all evening. Direct. "I appreciate that." "You're right, there's more to the story." Alexander leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, suddenly seeming more human and less like a corporate god. 5 years ago, Ryan Mitchell tried to destroy one of my companies. He came to me with a proposal for a joint venture that would have given him access to my proprietary technology. When I refused, he attempted a hostile takeover using information he'd gained during our negotiations. Sophia's eyes widened. "What happened?" "I crushed him, naturally. But the experience taught me something about Ryan's character. He's a parasite, Sophia. He finds talented people, uses them until they're empty, then discards them while taking credit for their work." Alexander's voice hardened to granite. "What he did to you was personal for me." The admission hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Sophia wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeking warmth as a chill ran down her spine. "So tonight was about revenge, not about helping me." "It started that way." Alexander's honesty was brutal. But watching you handle his attack with such grace, maintaining your dignity even as he tried to destroy you publicly, I realized I'd underestimated you completely. As the night wore on, their conversation deepened. Alexander spoke about his vision for the future of business, his plans to create companies that actually made the world better. But it was the way he listened to her ideas, the respect in his eyes when she shared her thoughts, that began to thaw the ice around Sophia's heart. You know, Alexander said, settling back in the chair, when I first read about Chen dynamics, I was impressed by the creativity. But tonight, I realized creativity without strength is just pretty wallpaper. You have both. The way he said it made her pulse quicken. She looked up to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment, the air between them crackled with possibility, with the dangerous attraction of two wounded souls recognizing each other in the dark. There's something else, Alexander said suddenly, standing and moving to her small window that overlooked the Queen's streetscape. If you accept my offer, if you come to work for Romano Industries, you need to understand what you're signing up for. Sophia joined him at the window, acutely aware of his proximity. The scent of his cologne, expensive and subtly masculine, made her head spin. What do you mean? Ryan won't let this go. What happened tonight? The humiliation. He'll want revenge. Working with me will make you a target. Alexander turned to face her, his expression serious. I can protect you, but it means trusting me completely. Trust. Sophia tasted the word like poison. That's not exactly my strong suit anymore. Alexander reached out and gently touched her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. The contact sent electricity through her entire body. I know Ryan hurt you. Know he made you question your worth, your abilities, even your sanity. I'm not Ryan, Sophia. The sincerity in his voice made her want to believe him. But the walls she'd built around her heart were fortress strong. How do I know you won't do the same thing? Use me for my ideas and then throw me away when someone better comes along. Alexander's hand dropped to his side, but his eyes never left hers. Don't. Because I'm going to give you something Ryan never did. Complete control. What? The new division will be yours to run, your vision to execute. I'll provide the resources and the protection, but the decisions will be yours. Success or failure, it will be on your terms. It was everything she'd ever wanted, wrapped in an offer that seemed too good to be true. Sophia studied Alexander's face, looking for the lie, the hidden agenda. Instead, she saw something that terrified her more than deception. Genuine care. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes distant. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because 5 years ago, someone did to me what Ryan did to you. Someone I trusted, someone I loved, took everything and left me for dead. Bata. Confession hit her like a physical blow. Here was this powerful, seemingly invincible man, admitting to the same kind of betrayal that had nearly destroyed her. The vulnerability in his voice made something crack open in her chest. Who? She breathed. My business partner, my best friend. Alexander's jaw clenched. My fiancé. The word hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Sophia felt her heart racing as she realized she was seeing behind the mask, glimpsing the wounded man beneath the billionaire facade. She took my company's secrets to a competitor, convinced my investors I was unstable, and walked away with everything. While I fought to keep Romano Industries alive, Alexander's voice was steady, but Sophia could see the old pain flickering in his eyes. I rebuilt from nothing, but I never forgot the lesson. Trust is a luxury I couldn't afford. Then why are you offering it to me? Alexander moved closer, and Sophia could feel the heat radiating from his body. Because sometimes you meet someone who makes you want to risk everything again. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent text. Alexander glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. What is it? Sophia asked. Ryan's already started his revenge campaign. Alexander's voice was grim as he showed her the phone. He's telling everyone you stole his ideas, that tonight was a setup. He's claiming I'm using you to get back at him. Sophia felt the familiar panic rising in her chest. They'll believe him. They always believe him. Not this time. Alexander's voice was steel wrapped in silk. But we need to move fast. If you're going to trust me, it has to be now. He pulled out a business card and a pen, writing something. On the back, there's a car waiting downstairs. It will take you to my penthouse. You'll be safe there while I handle Ryan. Alexander, I can't just disappear. I have responsibilities, bills to pay. All taken care of. He pressed the card into her hand. Sophia, I need you to listen very carefully. Ryan is dangerous when he's cornered, and tonight you became his biggest threat. He won't just try to destroy your career this time. He'll try to destroy you. The weight of his words settled over her like a shroud. Looking into Alexander's eyes, she saw her own fear reflected back, along with something else, a promise of protection that felt both thrilling and terrifying. If I go with you, she said quietly, there's no going back, is there? Alexander's smile was sad and knowing. There never was, Sophia. The moment you walked into that gala tonight, you changed both our fates. As if summoned by his words, her phone rang. Caller ID made her blood freeze. Ryan Mitchell. Alexander saw her expression and gently took the phone from her trembling fingers. Don't answer it, he said, but we need to go. Now. Asterisk 3 weeks. Later, Sophia stood in the glass-walled conference room of Romano Industries' Manhattan headquarters. Watching the city sprawl beneath her feet, like a conquered kingdom, the new marketing division was already exceeding projections. Her innovative campaigns generating buzz throughout the industry. For the first time in months, she felt like herself again. The Meridian account is officially ours, she announced to her small but brilliant team. They loved the interactive concept. Applause filled the room as her colleagues celebrated another victory. But even as she smiled and accepted their congratulations, Sophia's mind was elsewhere. Alexander had been distant lately, their late night. Strategy sessions replaced by brief professional meetings. The intimacy of that first night in her apartment felt like a dream now. Miss Chen. Her assistant's voice broke through her thoughts. Mr. Romano would like to see you in his office. Sophia's pulse quickened as it always did when Alexander summoned her. Despite the professional distance he'd maintained, the attraction between them simmered just beneath the surface of every interaction. She'd catch him watching her during meetings, or feel his hand linger when he passed her documents. The tension was becoming unbearable. Alexander's office occupied the entire top floor, a monument to power and success. Floored-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, while priceless artwork adorned the walls. Alexander stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the afternoon sky. We need to talk, he said without turning around. Something in his tone made her stomach clench. About the Meridian campaign? Because the projections show not about business. Alexander finally faced her, and the expression in his green eyes made her blood run cold. About Ryan. What about him? Sophia tried to keep her voice steady. He's been quiet lately. No more public attacks, no more he's been planning something bigger. Alexander moved to his desk and pulled out a thick manila folder. My security team intercepted some interesting communications. Sophia approached cautiously, her heels clicking on the marble floor. What kind of communications? Alexander opened, the folder revealing photographs and documents that made her vision blur. Bank statements showing large deposits to her account from shell companies. Emails that appeared to be from her offering Romano Industries confidential strategies to competitors. Meeting records placing her in locations she'd never been, at times she could account for. This is impossible, she whispered, her hands shaking as she picked up the documents. I never wrote these emails. I've never even heard of these companies. Alexander, you have to believe me. But when she looked up, the warmth was gone from his eyes. In its place was the cold calculation she'd seen him use to destroy his enemies. The evidence is quite comprehensive, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Bank records, digital fingerprints, witness statements, even security footage. Witness statements. What witnesses? Panic was rising in her chest like floodwater. Alexander, this has to be fabricated. Ryan brought this too. My attention? Yes. But the investigation was conducted by an independent firm. Alexander's words were precise, surgical. The same firm that exposed your theft of his ideas at Chen Dynamics? The room spun around her. You're believing him? After everything he did to me, everything you know about him, you're taking his word over mine? I'm believing the evidence. Sophia, evidence that suggests you've been playing a very different game than I realized. Alexander moved closer, and she could see something that looked almost like pain flicker across his features. The question is, was any of it real? That night in your apartment, the vulnerability, the connection I thought we shared? It was all real? The words tore from her throat. Alexander, I would never betray you. You have to know that.
After
What we've both been through. How could you think? Because I've been here before. His control finally cracked, raw emotion bleeding through. Victoria seemed just as innocent, just as wounded. She played the victim perfectly, while she stole everything I'd built. I am not Victoria. Sophia stepped closer, desperation making. Her bold. And you are not the same man who trusted blindly 5 years ago. Look at me, Alexander. Really look at me. For a moment, she saw him waver. The connection between them flared to life, the same electric recognition that had drawn them together. But then his expression hardened again. Security will escort you out, he said, turning back toward the window. You have 1 hour to clear your office. Any attempts to contact me or access company systems will result in criminal charges. Alexander, please. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't care. Don't do this. Don't let him win again. He already has. Alexander's reflection in the window looked like a stranger. The difference is, this time I see it coming. An hour later, Sophia sat in the back of a taxi, her personal belongings in a cardboard box on her lap. The city blurred past through tears she couldn't stop. In the span of 60 minutes, she'd lost everything again. The job that restored her confidence. The future she dared to dream of. And worst of all, the man who'd made her believe in trust again. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoyed the show, darling. Some people never learn. R. Ryan, of course. He'd orchestrated this entire elaborate revenge, probably from the moment Alexander had humiliated him at the gala. But how had he created such convincing evidence? How had he made it look so real? As the taxi pulled up to her Queens apartment, Sophia saw a familiar figure waiting on the steps. Marcus Webb, Ryan's business partner, smiled as she approached. Hello, Sophia. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you, she said, clutching her box of belongings. Oh, but I have plenty to say to you. Marcus's smile was sharp as a blade, like how we did it. How we convinced the great Alexander Romano that his newest protege was playing the same game as his ex-fiancée. Sophia stopped walking. Do you mean how you convinced him? Do you really think Victoria betrayed him randomly? That you just happened to steal his secrets and run to a competitor? Marcus laughed. Ryan has been planning Alexander's downfall for 5 years, Sophia. Victoria was just the first phase. You were the second. The blood drained from Sophia's face. Victoria worked for Ryan. Victoria worked for us. Every moment of their relationship was carefully orchestrated. The betrayal, the theft, the way she destroyed his ability to trust, it was all designed. To prepare him for you? Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. We needed Alexander isolated, paranoid, and utterly convinced that everyone was out to steal from him. That way, when the time came to destroy his relationship. With you, he'd do our work for us. You're lying. But even as she said it, pieces were clicking into place. The perfect timing of Ryan's evidence. The way Alexander had been so quick to believe the worst. The familiar pattern of betrayal that played right into his deepest fears. The best part, Marcus continued, is that now Alexander will never trust anyone again. He'll live the rest of his life in that tower, alone and bitter, convinced that every person who gets close to him is another Victoria, another you. Sophia felt something break inside her chest, but it wasn't her heart. It was something deeper, something that had been holding her back. It's the part of her that had accepted defeat, that had let men like Ryan define her worth. You made one mistake, she said quietly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what's that? Sophia looked up, and for the first time in months, Marcus saw the woman who had built Chin Dynamics from nothing. The woman who had revolutionized marketing strategies and commanded boardrooms. The woman who had survived Ryan's first betrayal and come back fighting. You assumed I would break. Her voice was steady now, filled with steel. Just like you assumed Alexander would never figure out the truth. But you don't know either of us as well as you think you do. 2 days after Marcus's revelation, Sophia sat in a coffee shop in Brooklyn, her laptop open and her phone recording as Victoria Blackwood sat across from her.
Alexander's former fiancée
Was nothing like Sophia had imagined. Petite, blonde, and seemingly fragile, with the kind of innocent beauty that made men want to protect her. I've been waiting 5 years for someone to ask the right questions, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan found me when I was desperate, drowning in student loans and working 3 jobs to survive. He offered me more money than I'd ever seen to play a role, the role of Alexander's perfect victim, Sophia said. Victoria nodded, tears streaming. Down her face, I was supposed to get close to him, gain his trust, then steal his company's secrets and disappear. But I didn't expect to fall in love with him. The confession hit Sophia like a physical blow. Even now, years later, Victoria's pain was palpable. Then why did you go through with it? Because Ryan had insurance. Victoria's hands trembled as she reached into her purse, pulling out photographs that made Sophia's stomach turn. They showed a teenage boy, maybe 16, with Victoria's eyes and fragile smile. My brother Danny. Ryan found out about him, about the gambling debts he'd gotten into with some very dangerous people. If I didn't complete the job, Danny would disappear. Where is he now? Safe, in witness protection, but safe. Victoria wiped her eyes. I've been gathering evidence against Ryan ever since, waiting for the right moment. When I saw what happened to you, I knew that moment had come. An hour later, Sophia stood outside Romano Industries. The flash drive Victoria had given her clutched in her sweating palm. The security guards recognized her but followed their orders, escorting her to the lobby and no further. She'd have to find another way to reach Alexander. Ms. Chen? She turned to see Alina Vasquez, Alexander's executive assistant, approaching. With a puzzled expression, Elena, thank God. I need to see Alexander. It's urgent. Elena's professional mask slipped slightly. I'm sorry, but Mr. Romano was very clear. You're not to have access to Ryan Mitchell has been playing a 5-year game to destroy Alexander, and I can prove it. Sophia held up the flash drive. Everything is on here. Victoria's testimony, bank records showing payments to her communications, between Ryan and Marcus, even recordings of their planning sessions. Alina stared at the small device like it was a bomb. You're saying Mr. Romano's ex-fiancée was working for his enemy? I'm saying we were both pawns in Ryan's revenge fantasy. But this ends now, one way or another. Alina looked around the busy lobby, then made a decision. Conference room 12. 5 minutes. I'll try to get him there, but I can't promise anything. Sophia spent those 5 minutes pacing the small conference room, rehearsing what she would say when the door finally opened and Alexander walked in. Her prepared speech died on her lips. He looked haggard, older than his 35 years.
Yes.
With dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights. You have exactly 60 seconds, he said without preamble. Victoria was working for Ryan. Sophia thrust the flash drive toward him. Everything on here proves it. The betrayal 5 years ago, the evidence against me, all of it was orchestrated by Ryan as part of a long-term revenge plan. Alexander stared at the flash drive but didn't take it. And why should I believe anything you say? Because I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the evidence. Bank records, recorded conversations, Victoria's full confession. Sophia stepped closer, her voice breaking. Alexander, Ryan didn't just steal from us. He stole our ability to trust each other. Don't let him win. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes, but his expression remained guarded. Assuming this is all true, why should I care? You're still gone, Sophia. The damage is done. The damage is done to me, yes. It's my reputation, my career, probably any chance I had at a normal life. but you still have a choice. She moved to the conference table and opened her laptop. Ryan's planning a hostile takeover of Romano Industries? It's all here. The shell companies, the investor meetings, the timeline he's been working toward. This for 5 years, and getting rid of me was just the final phase. Alexander finally stepped closer, peering at the screen. Sophia watched his expression change as he processed the information. The carefully orchestrated campaign to isolate him. The network of fake companies designed to drain his resources. The investors Ryan had been slowly turning against him. Son of a bitch, Alexander breathed. There's more. Sophia pulled up another file. The morning after the gala, Ryan knew exactly which evidence to present to you, because he'd been monitoring our relationship from the beginning. He had surveillance on my apartment, my phone, even my computer. Alexander's jaw clenched as he read through the surveillance reports. He was watching us. He was waiting for us to get close enough that betraying me would destroy your ability to trust anyone else. Sophia closed the laptop, her voice soft. He counted on your past trauma to make you push me away without investigating too deeply. And it worked. Alexander's admission was barely audible. It worked because we let it work, because we were both so afraid of being hurt again that we chose to believe the worst instead of fighting for the truth. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. I wanted to believe you. That first night, when you looked me in the eye and denied everything, every instinct I had said you were telling the truth. But the evidence was so convincing, and I'd been burned so badly before. I know. I understand why you made the choice you did. Sophia felt tears threatening again. But I need you to understand something, too. When you threw me out, when you looked at me like I was just another Victoria, it nearly broke me. Not because I lost the job, but because I lost you. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Alexander stepped closer, his hand reaching out to touch her face before stopping himself. Sophia, I don't. She stepped back, shaking her head. Don't apologize and don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not here to win you back, Alexander. I'm here because Ryan is going to destroy everything you've built. And despite what happened between us, I can't let that happen. Alexander studied her face, and she saw the moment he truly understood what she was offering. Salvation with no strings attached. Protection for the man who had cast her out. What do you need me to do? He asked. Trust me one more time. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Using Victoria's testimony and the evidence she'd gathered, they would turn Ryan's own strategy against him. The key was timing. They had exactly 48 hours before Ryan's investors' meeting, where he planned to present evidence of Alexander's instability and push through the hostile takeover. That evening, Sophia sat in Alexander's penthouse for the first time, surrounded by forensic accountants, digital security experts, and lawyers. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now part of the team working to save the company that had exiled her. Just days before, shell companies are all traceable back to Ryan through a series of offshore accounts, one of the accountants reported. He's been siphoning funds from his legitimate businesses to finance this operation. And the surveillance? Alexander asked. Completely illegal. Multiple felonies, including corporate espionage and invasion of privacy. The lawyer looked up from his notes. We have enough to destroy him completely. As the team worked through the night, Sophia found herself alone with Alexander on his balcony. The city spread out beneath them like a field of stars. The silence between them was different now. It's no longer charged with unspoken attraction, but heavy with shared understanding. Asterisk, there's something I need to tell you, Alexander said, his voice barely audible over the wind. Before all this started, before Ryan, before Victoria, I was a different man. I believed in partnership, in building something together with someone you love. Ryan didn't just steal my company's secrets. He stole my ability to dream of sharing my life with someone. Sophia leaned against the railing, not trusting herself to look at him. I know. He stole that from me too. The night in your apartment, when I offered you the job, I wasn't just offering you a position. I was offering you a future. With me. Alexander's confession was barely a whisper. I was falling in love with you, Sophia, and it terrified me. The words hit her like physical blows. each one reopening wounds she'd tried so hard to heal. Don't do this, Alexander. Don't make this harder than it already is. I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did. But when this is over, when Ryan is finished and the dust settles, I need you to know that my biggest regret isn't that I trusted the wrong person. It's that I didn't trust the right one. Sophia finally turned to face him, and the pain in his eyes nearly undid her. What are you asking me? I'm asking if there's any chance, any possibility that we could try again. Not as boss and employee, not as business partners, but as two people who found something real in the middle of all this chaos. The question she'd been dreading hung between them. Sophia looked out at the city, at the life she'd built and lost, and was trying to build again. Ask me after we stop, Ryan, she said finally. Ask me when we're both free. The investors' meeting took place in Romano Industries' main conference room, a glass-walled space that had witnessed countless corporate battles. Ryan arrived with his usual confidence, flanked by Marcus and a team of lawyers. He looked like a man about to claim his kingdom. Gentlemen, Ryan addressed the room full of investors. Thank you for coming on such short notice. What I'm about to show you will demonstrate why Romano Industries needs new leadership. He began his presentation with practiced ease, outlining Alexander's pattern of poor judgment and emotional instability. The investors listened with growing concern as Ryan painted a picture of a CEO who made decisions based on personal vendettas, rather than business logic. And finally, Ryan said, pulling up his fabricated evidence against Sophia, we have the most recent example of Alexander's compromised judgment. Hiring a woman with a history of corporate theft, giving her access to sensitive information, and then being so blinded by personal involvement that he failed to see the obvious security risk. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Several investors looked convinced. However, Ryan continued with false regret. I'm not here to destroy Alexander Romano. He was once a brilliant businessman, and with proper guidance he could be again. I'm proposing a restructuring that would allow him to remain as a figurehead while more stable leadership takes operational control. It was a masterful performance, Sophia had to admit. Ryan had positioned himself as the reluctant savior, the friend willing to clean up Alexander's mess. The investors were nodding, ready to hand over control of the company. That's when Alexander stood up. Thank you, Ryan. That was very illuminating. Alexander's voice was calm, controlled. I'd like to respond to your concerns if I may. Ryan's confidence faltered slightly, but he nodded. Of course. Alexander moved to the presentation screen and connected his laptop. You're absolutely right that I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I let personal feelings cloud my judgment, and I failed to see threats that were right in front of me, but not in the way you described. The first image that appeared on screen was a bank statement showing payments, from Ryan's companies to Victoria Blackwood. The room went silent. 5 years ago, my fiancée betrayed me. What I didn't know until recently was that she was being paid by Ryan Mitchell to steal my company's secrets. Alexander's voice remained steady as he clicked through the evidence. The theft wasn't random corporate espionage. It was the first phase of a 5-year plan to destroy my company and my ability to trust anyone who might help me defend against a hostile takeover. Ryan's face had gone pale, but he tried to maintain his composure. This is obviously fabricated phase 2, Alexander continued, ignoring the interruption. Involved isolating me further by destroying any new relationships I might form. Enter Sophia Chen, a brilliant marketer whose career Ryan had already destroyed once. By manipulating us both, Ryan ensured that when the time came to present false evidence against Sophia,
Ow.
I would be too damaged by past betrayal to investigate properly. The investors were staring at Ryan now, their expressions shifting from concern to suspicion. Marcus had quietly moved toward the door, but Alexander's security team blocked his exit. In Phase 3, Alexander clicked to the final presentation slide, was this meeting. Having isolated me from potential allies and convinced you all that I was emotionally compromised, Ryan planned to swoop in as the voice of reason and take control of my company. The evidence was overwhelming: recorded conversations, financial records, surveillance reports, and Victoria's full confession. By the time Alexander finished his presentation, Ryan was standing alone, his supporters having distanced themselves from the wreckage of his scheme. "The question now," Alexander said, looking directly at Ryan, "is whether we handle this privately or publicly. Corporate espionage, fraud, conspiracy, invasion of privacy. The FBI would be very interested in this case." Ryan's composure finally cracked completely. "You can't prove intent. Can't prove I meant to, actually. We can." Sophia stepped into the room, carrying a tablet. "Because you confessed everything to Marcus 3 days ago, and Victoria was wearing a wire," as the recording of Ryan's detailed confession played through the conference room speakers. Sophia watched his empire crumble in real time. The investors who had been ready to hand him control of Romano Industries were now calling their lawyers. Marcus was already being escorted out in handcuffs, but Sophia only had eyes for Alexander. Across the room, he was watching her with an expression she'd never seen before: wonder, gratitude, and something that looked like hope. When the meeting finally ended and the last of the investigators had left, Sophia and Alexander found themselves alone in his office. The city sparkled below them, but neither was paying attention to the view. "It's over," Alexander said, sinking into his chair like a man who had carried the weight of the world and finally set it down. "It's over," Sophia agreed. "Ryan won't be bothering anyone for the next 20 to 30 years. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, processing the magnitude of what they'd accomplished. Then Alexander looked up at her with those piercing green eyes that had captivated her from the first night. "You've saved me," he said simply. "After everything I did to you, everything I cost you, you still came back to save me. Why?" Sophia moved to the window, looking out at the city where she'd lost everything and found it again. "Because some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. Even when the person you're fighting for has hurt you. And some people are worth trusting. Even when trust feels like the most dangerous thing in the world," Alexander said, standing and moving to join her at the window. This time when he reached out to touch her face, she didn't pull away. Fingers traced the line of her cheek with reverent gentleness, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. "I love you, Sophia Chen," he whispered against her lips. "I loved you. That first night in your apartment, I loved you when I was pushing you away, and I'll love you for the rest of my life if you'll let me." "I love you too," she breathed, the words she'd been holding back finally free. "Even when I hated you, even when I wanted to forget you, I loved you." Their kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid the other might disappear. But then Alexander's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Sophia melted into him with a sigh that spoke of coming home after a long and terrible journey. When they finally broke apart, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," Sophia laughed, the sound bright with tears and joy. "Are you proposing to me in your office?" "I'm proposing to you everywhere. In my office, on this balcony, in that little apartment in Queens where you first trusted me with your truth." Alexander's smile was radiant. "I'm proposing to you for the rest of our lives." "Then yes," Sophia said, pulling him down for another kiss. "Yes to everything. Yes to trusting again. Yes to building something together. Yes to loving you even when it's terrifying." As they stood wrapped in each other's arms, looking out over the city that had witnessed their destruction and their resurrection, Sophia felt the final pieces of her broken heart click back into place. Ryan had stolen so much from both of them: their companies, their confidence, their ability to trust. But he hadn't been able to steal the most important thing of all. He hadn't been able to steal their love. 6 months later, Alexander and Sophia stood on the rooftop of the Plaza Hotel, the same building where their story had begun with humiliation and ended with triumph. Surrounded by friends and family, they exchanged vows that spoke of second chances and the courage to love again despite past betrayals. "You taught me that the opposite of trust isn't suspicion," Alexander said, his voice carrying clearly across the rooftop garden. "It's isolation. And you saved me from a lifetime of being alone." You taught me that falling isn't failing, Sophia replied, tears streaming down her face. And that sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is get back up and reach for someone else's hand. As they kissed beneath the New York skyline, sealing their promise to face whatever came next together, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the street below. Ryan Mitchell, out on bail and awaiting trial, stood in the shadow of the building where his revenge had begun and his empire had ended. But his expression wasn't one of defeat or anger. It was something far more dangerous. The look of a man already planning his next move. The game, it seemed, wasn't quite over. Asterisk. Don't forget to like this video if it touched your heart, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and share to spread kindness. The end.